Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battisil, and I want to know, what's your next move? Hey there, I'm Arlene Battisil, your host and resident provocateur, and I have a very special guest with me today, John Buchan, who is, I would have to say, in my 30-some years of experience in dealing with advertising copy, writing email messages, writing website copy, every way that you present yourself out on the internet involves words. And those words make the difference between whether or not people know and like and trust you and ultimately want to buy from you. And I wanted John to join us. This is very rare because he doesn't do this very often. So I feel very honored that he was willing to do this and share his wisdom and insight with us today, because he is absolutely the best. And he has done some things that are so creative around how he writes things that I wanted you to be able to get some exposure to the different ways that people are actually doing things with how they talk about things or how they approach people out there. Because one of the biggest issues is when you're dealing with an audience that's never heard of you before, or if you're trying to do business with another company that has never heard of you, is not open to wanting to hear your sales pitch or anything like that, you're going to do the outreach anyways. You're going to do an advertisement, be it Facebook or whatever. How do you need to present yourself, and what do you need to say that is going to make people feel like, hey, there is something really different about you. I want to talk to you. And that's exactly what John is expert at. So first of all, John, thank you so much for being with me. My good friend, John, it's so good to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
You're so polite, John. I don't know what's wrong with you. You and I never talk offline like we're polite.
It's because it's being recorded and I'm very PR savvy.
Yeah, got it. Okay, fair enough. You win that point. All right, John, rather than go into the details about your background, let's just get to the meat of the matter, which is the whole issue of when you're selling online, you don't have the ability to communicate directly with people. And as a result, unless you're doing a video, everything has to be communicated in words. So let's start from the beginning and talk to me about the importance of those words and how people do it right and how they do it wrong.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that's worked really well for me, and this is probably owing to my that I never really studied traditional copywriting until recently. So I've got a very different style. Mm-hmm. And I think of it this way. I write to people rather than pain points. So people get trapped in this world. And I think I was trying to find an example of this, of where else this exists in the real world. And in the world of economics, they use this word econs for these rational pretend beings that don't really exist. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people write to these imaginary people. They don't write to an individual person. So when I write copy, instead of trying to hide something away, like when I'm writing a cold email, a lot of people would start a cold email or a piece of direct mail with a question like, do you have trouble navigating the difficult world of digital marketing? Like, I can't even say it without doing it in that stupid infomercial voice. Whereas when I send someone an email, I say the most honest thing I possibly can. And I know what they're kind of thinking. When they get an email from a stranger, they're wondering, who is this? What are they selling me? So I start with, greetings, Arlene. You've never heard of me. Hi, I got your data from a list. Gasp. But hey, at least you're list worthy. That's got to be worth something, right? So it's the most honest thing you can possibly say. And when you do that, it's very disarming. It's like, oh, it's kind of like objection handling, I guess, in a weird way. Mm. You're immediately saying, yeah, we don't know each other. We can agree on that. But hey, at least you've made it. You're on a list. I've made a joke out of it. And you can do the same with Facebook ads. Like the first line is a lot of people, not particularly big fans of ads, say, yeah, oh, great, another ad. Like start it with what the person is likely to be thinking, and then try and say the most honest thing you can. And I call it disarming copywriting, because that's what you're doing. You've got to disarm someone before you can sell to them. And a great way of doing that is humor. So that's the first initial thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this whole business of speaking to the pain points, this is the most classic way of using messaging in advertising, in email copy, in website copy, all of it. The emphasis from everybody who teaches this stuff to everyone who just has a conversation about it, the emphasis is always on you have to address the pain point right up front so that people feel that you're identifying with their pain, you're giving voice to it, and therefore they trust you. Now, what's the difference between that and what you're talking about, where you're disarming people? And in your approach, you do it through humor, which is always effective.
Yeah, I would say that all of that stuff is obviously works, otherwise people wouldn't do it. But I think because there's so many people, and especially these days with things like ClickFunnels, there's so many people setting up their own funnels and Facebook ads. People are inundated, and everyone seems to be trying to find, say, the best webinar template or the best Facebook ad template, and then merely just optimizing, like, how do we get to be the best version of this template? Right. Whereas that doesn't interest me. I don't know if it's arrogance or I just like to be creative and try things. But my approach is, let's try some things that shouldn't work. And you'll often find that, say you search for cold email templates on Google, you'll see the same super short functional cold email templates that, and they say, don't use humor. And I was like, no, I want to test that. Like, I don't think that's empirical. Just because one blogger's put that and then another one's copied it and another one's copied it, I don't think it's empirical. So I like to try things that people say don't work. And when you do that, you find the confident assertions of others are by no means empirical. So with mine, I think the first step is, before you immediately go into something, is, hey, what can I say in that line or those first few lines that's going to make them smile or smirk, smile, or laugh out loud? Because if they're smiling when they start to read your pitch, they're going to be more receptive to it than if you just go right in. And the way I look at it is how would you wouldn't do that in a normal conversation with someone. You wouldn't just go in and start speaking like about pain points. Have a little bit of a conversation first, make them smile first, and then go in with that stuff.
Right. And I love your point just then about how you wouldn't have a conversation with people that sounds like this, where the first thing you're saying to them is their pain point. You do start a conversation. And I always liken this to, when you go on a date with someone, sure, some people want to, get them into bed right away, but that is not the way you go about doing things with people. That is not the way that you build a relationship. And you can build a relationship online very, very quickly if you're talking to the person with respect, with, recognizing that they have a brain, that they're going to make choices about things. And what you want to do is you want to be the best candidate for whatever choice they make. And in your case, John, the thing that's been most effective for you is to use the approach of disarming them. It is the unexpected. It's very disruptive. And anytime you do something different from what everybody else is doing, you've got their attention, right? Is that fair to say?
It's completely correct. And also the act of getting cut through is persuasive in itself. If you've done something clever and creative, whatever the media type is, the medium, Facebook ads, direct mail, whatever it might be, just the fact that you've got their attention and you've done it in a clever way, that's immediately if you do it with humor, you've made them laugh, made them smile, but also it's kind of like, oh, that's clever. And that's a great first impression to make. That the first thing that they've seen of yours is, oh, that's different and unique and it's clever and it's made me laugh. What a great first impression to make. And you don't get that with a traditional approach. Right,
for sure. So let's talk about humor for a second, because for people who are listening to this, the likely response is going to be, but I don't think I'm very funny. I don't actually have a sense of humor, or I don't think I do. There is going to be a fear that people have around this idea of writing something that's different from what everybody else is doing, because it's now taking them into the dark. And they are going to feel that they have no skills to do this because there's no light where they are in the dark. So for somebody who's brand new at selling online, or even has been successful at selling online and wants to do even better, we all know that we use, our websites to basically present a sales message or pitch, or to talk about ourselves, or whatever it is that we're talking about on our websites. Many people are using Facebook ads, so you have to write something there. Many people are using landing pages where they drive traffic from Facebook to a landing page, and you have to write copy there. And of course, the ever-present and not to be neglected, emails. So there's writing involved in all of this, and most people who start a business are only wanting to just, pick the products and then make them all available for sale and hope that somebody shows up either in person or online. What do you say to a person who is naturally resistant to writing something, because this is not what they do? This is not their forte. They don't know anything about writing.
Well, there's a few points on that. On the first one, I would say, is like for me it's natural. Like I get on a keyboard when I was doing like the templates recently, and I just love it, but not everyone's like that. So the first one is record yourself speaking and transcribe it, and you'll see how different that is to when you write, because people get in front of a keyboard and they can't get the words out, or they're scared to put even a smiley face, or we go into this weird mode of like jargon filled sort of very not self-important, but you know what I mean, it's not the personality that people have. So record yourself speaking is a good way of doing it. And secondly, there's a great quote, I think it's Muhammad Ali, where he says, "There are no jokes. The truth is the funniest joke of all." So think of what is the most honest thing I can possibly say. That often is so unusual, and especially in the world of business. I don't know why, because a lot of business is hype. So the counter to that is, well, what is the most honest thing I can say? And that's an example. There is my email where I start with, "You've never heard of me. I got your details from a list. But hey, list your list." So it's the most honest thing you can say. And then I would say for third, there are simple formulas that you can use to make funny copy. So I've got a little guide on this called How to Be Somewhat Funny. And there are little formulas such as the comic triple, which is probably the easiest out of all of them, is, so here's an example from a cold email that I used to send, which was, "If you agree to meet with me and talk about your digital marketing needs, I will take you for coffee or lunch or tequila shots and promise to be somewhat entertaining." So you make that third one sensible for the first one, sensible for the second one, make the third one the funny or absurd one. So there's these simple formulas that you can use. So I would say, write like you speak. Think of the most honest things you can possibly say, and how can you incorporate those, even if it feels somewhat unusual and uncomfortable, because that's not like what people have taught. And then learn those simple tricks. If you search for joke formulas, or the free guide I've mentioned, How to Be Somewhat Funny, there are loads of little ones, and you can very quickly become adept at them. Those three things I'd say mostly.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think your first point there was about recording your copy. This is absolutely huge, because what's happening now is that people are actually writing books, actual books that get published on Amazon and a Kindle version as well. Legitimate books are being written or created or produced by people just speaking into their cell phone and recording what they're saying. They then get that audio file transcribed, and then you just go back through the transcription, and you edit it accordingly. And it's absolutely stunning how quickly you can write this stuff if you're just talking. But I think one of the big problems, to your point, is that people feel that they have to actually write this stuff. Well, it's not the act of writing, it's what's in your head, what's in your mouth, and just getting it out there and playing around with the words once they're down on paper because they've been transcribed, and figuring out, is there another way that you can speak that's going to make what you're saying more interesting? Because you can't sell facts and figures, features and benefits. You have to sell yourself and your personality. Now, there are going to be people, again, listening to this who are going to say, but that's not my style. I don't talk like that in my everyday life. I'm a serious person. And yes, I want to be able to sell, but I don't think it's authentic or genuine for me to be talking or writing my messaging in a way that doesn't actually sound like me. What do you say to them?
Well, surely if they're recording themselves, they shouldn't change who they are when they're recording. Just be yourself, and that will, because a lot of what I'm talking about is really just being as honest as you possibly can. Like when I write, I have the other issue where I can't write in like corporate style. My brain's just like, nah, can't do it. I can only write in my kind of the style that I write in. So what I would say is, don't try and pretend. Like if you are a serious person, that's fine. Let that come out. Like when you're speaking, you're recording your speech. Just talk how you normally would. You shouldn't do anything that's contrived or artificial. What I would say is, even the people that consider themselves serious, I imagine most of those people, unless there's like 3% of people that have no sense of humor at all, most people do. Yeah. And this is one of the objections I've had often on the other side, but I think it relates, is people go, oh, that's all very well and good for you, John, but that won't work in my sector. I deal with IT directors, or I deal with finance directors, or I deal with accountants. And it's always these people, these people that apparently don't have friends that they watch crap movies with and listen to really awful 80s music. We're all people and we have these things, most of us anyway. And nobody suddenly decides because they've become a successful CEO or IT director that, you know what, I don't like to smile or laugh anymore. That's something I did when I wasn't successful. It never happens. So I would say people are probably more interesting than they think. And if you start recording yourself and getting your thoughts out there, your perspective is interesting. And while not everyone can use my absurd, silly approach, I think if you just talk honestly, most people are good people and good stuff will come out. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And the more comfortable you will be with it. And I think that might be an issue of confidence as well. People think, well, I'm serious and I'm not. No, you're probably more interesting than you think you are. A little pep talk.
Yeah, for sure. Or you're more interesting than you give yourself credit for. Indeed. And I think that one of the things that happens, and tell me if this is your experience, one of the things that I find happens with people who are starting a new business and are just new to selling online or have been doing it but haven't really had much success is they think that there's a formula for how this works. And what I mean by formula is they look at what everybody else is doing and think, oh, that must be how it's done. Or they'll get on several email lists because they wanted to get some free download from someone. And now they're on the email list and they're getting the emails every day. And they're just trying to reproduce the emails that they're getting. But the whole structure of them and the formula to them, every one of them looks familiar. Therefore, they think this is how you do it. But the reality is when you're thinking about messaging, it's like anything else in life. Everything we do is based on relationships, and how you talk to people influences whether or not they want to have a relationship with you. And in the beginning, you are not selling. You're not selling at all. What you're doing is you are making yourself available to people, making it so that they feel comfortable with you, and you're kind of breaking the ice like at a cocktail party. And so if people, and what you're doing is you're trying to find things in common. And in my opinion, and tell me your experience, John, that the goal with these cold emails or any of the messaging that's going on, the intent in the beginning is not to sell stuff. It is to sell yourself. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, exactly. And this is a common mistake with cold pitching is people write emails that try and sell every feature and benefit in that first email. Mm-hmm. And it's the job of the first email is to convince the person that a 5-minute chat with you is not an awful use of their time. It's not to sell on. There's a great guy that I don't look up to many people. There's a guy called Dave Trott. And he was in television advertising. He's an old guy now, but he's won loads of awards. And he puts it this way, is that you've got to get attention, then you've got to communicate, and then you've got to persuade. And without the attention part, which is what I think Charm Offensive is great at, is getting attention, it doesn't matter how persuasive your message is or how brilliant your offering is. Without attention, none of those other things matter. And he gives a real simple example. So say you want to get your other half to take I use the American word, the garbage out. You might go, Kath, so you say your other half's name, and then you go, will you take the bins out? But that's not very persuasive. So will you take the bins out? If you do, I'll put the kettle on and I'll make a cup of tea or coffee. So it's like really that simple. Without the attention part, you can't do the communication and persuasion. So the first approach really is about disarming them and getting them to like you, so that they're open to hearing what you've got to say. And that's true with any media type. With Facebook ads, if it's a cold audience, you want to make that the best first impression. You want to have it so you stand out. And the other thing is the brain recognizes patterns. So if you're in an industry where there's loads of Facebook ads or there's loads, whatever it might be, by standing out and writing the most honest thing you can, immediately people will remember you, because they'll remember all of the other ads they've seen. Most people don't remember any of the ads they've seen. If you've got something that's distinct, unusual, creative, entertaining, you'll stand out and you will be remembered. And I had this with cold emails as well, where I had an email where someone emailed me a year later. They said, I've kept this funny email for a year and finally we are ready to work with you. That would never have happened with a normal approach.
Yeah, absolutely. You're forgotten as soon as they read it, if they even open it in the first place, or they pay any attention to your ad or your website. Now, John, can you provide some examples? Because, whoops, I'm going to lose my microphone right out the window. Can you give some examples for the people who are listening? Because, you and I can talk about this very freely and fluidly because we do this all the time. But for somebody who doesn't do this and really doesn't know where to start, can you give some examples that fall into each of the 3 points that you just made, which were you have to get their attention, you have to communicate, and you have to persuade. So can you talk a little about examples in each of those 3 areas so people get a sense of how this works? Yeah.
Well, the easiest one is, just because I remember this one off the cuff, is one of my original emails. So the first one, as I've said, is we've already said the greetings, Arlene. You've never heard of me. There's that line. I'll give another one though. Greetings, Arlene. I wanted to introduce myself in a way that showed I was interesting, witty, and clever. Alas, I wrote this email instead. So immediately, and then I go, let me get down to brass tacks. I run a digital marketing agency in London with my brother Gary and a team of 10 people, far more talented than me. We're looking to win new clients from those other evil, okay, maybe not evil, but not as good other agencies. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do. So if you would agree to meet with me to talk about your digital marketing needs, I will take you for coffee or lunch or tequila shots and promise to be somewhat entertaining. If you're lucky, I may even wear a top hat. I have attached a picture of a ferret that has been dressed up. According to the internet, his name is Colin. I trust this will charm you into submission. I await your profanity-filled response. So I just remember that one off the cuff. So the intention, introduce yourself in a self-effacing way. Then you could even do bullet points or whatever about, what it is you have to offer, what it is that you can help them with. And then what I do with the persuasion is I sugarcoat my requests. So another example of that is, say you're not in the same area as someone. I'll often say, if you agree to have a call with me, I'll sweeten the deal by telling you the lamest joke I know, or some random trivia I'm confident you'll find borderline fascinating. And some people actually reply and they ask for the joke or the trivia or both. And my response to that is, I think I could do both at once, which is, did you know the human body has enough bones to make an entire skeleton? And it's simple. And imagine if a prospect reacts like that, they're going to agree to a call with you. And another less silly example of that is, if you agree to a call with me, I generally get too enthusiastic about these things and I'll give you some ideas you're free to steal. And by saying that, you reposition it. Instead of them thinking I'm going to be hard sold to, they're thinking I'll do this call because I'm going to benefit from this. I can have ideas and then I can never speak to them again. And it's just a repositioning of that call, because no one likes to be hard sold to. And you're just making that call sound like a good idea rather than something that they at best begrudgingly agree to. You want enthusiastic responses, not just okay. That's the big difference between the responses you get from this approach. Is generally they're enthusiastic and gushing with praise rather than just I'll do that. I've got some time. There's a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. That's really brilliant, John. And I want to ask everyone who's listening to think about this. As you heard John walking through these examples, did you find yourself laughing? Did you find yourself feeling like this was somebody that I like? He's made me laugh. if nothing else, I want to at least talk to him a little bit because he's funny, he's clever. He's talked in a way where he's not blowing smoke up my ass. He's not doing the hard pressure sell job on me. He's just introducing himself in a way that now has my attention. And if you felt that way, you have just experienced the power of writing your message in this way, even if it's the message where you introduce yourself. And so, I think it's important to actually feel that experience, because if you are having that experience yourself, you've already gotten proof. You now have proof that this works because you already felt it yourself. So you can actually bank on the fact that people that you send these to are going to have that same reaction. And I can tell you in my own experience where in the copy that I write, and when I say copy, it's just the message that you're giving to people about whatever it is that you're trying to sell them or what you want them to do or the information you want to share with them. And in my copy, because I am very much the, shall we say, provocative character, where I am all in you, and for anyone who knows me, they know I am all in your face. There's no bullshit. I'm not taking any shit from anybody. And quite frankly, if you aren't cool enough, I don't want to work with you. And I actually have a website that's called Badass Sales Funnels, where I put that right out there. If you want me to do a particular piece of work for you, you have to be really cool, because I don't want to deal with anybody who's a pain in the ass and anybody who doesn't have a sense of humor. And if you're not cool enough, I'm not working with you. Or you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg to work with me, because it's your penalty payment for not being. Yeah. And yes, it's very provocative, and it will discourage some people from wanting to hire me to do something for them, but I don't want to work with them anyways.
It's not a people have said that to me. They're like, even with my LinkedIn picture, which is me photoshopped, rescuing a baby in a basket of kittens from a burning building, people have said, aren't you worried that people are going to say, not want to work with you because you're not professional? And I'm like, that's not a unfortunate side effect. That is a deliberate feature. Yeah. It qualifies the stern, the bland, and the self-important. And I have no problem. I have no problem with the self-important or the stern, but I think they should work with their own kind. So it's just it is a qualifying mechanism as well. So mine might be my absurd, silly humor. Yours is the provocative style. By being yourself, you shouldn't worry about it, because you're going to attract the right people and disqualify the others. And that can work. I know I made a joke about the serious and self-important there, but be yourself and you will attract the people that you will work best with, and you will disqualify the people that you want. It's really important. We forget about that in the world of business when we talk about pain points and these made-up people. You've got to work with people that you're going to get on with. And that's actually another benefit of this approach, by the way. If people are thinking, well, this all sounds good in theory, I need some hard evidence. One of the two of the principles of persuasion, liking, people like to do business that they like, they have things in common with. And secondly, reciprocity. If you make someone laugh and make them smile, they almost feel compelled to return. And often the responses you get back, people will drop the corporate tone. They'll talk to you like a friend. And that's a huge advantage over other approaches. Sorry, I just kind of rammed that in there out of nowhere.
No, that's really, really important. And I think that, the real big takeaway from this is the reality that you can just be yourself with people and drop all the corporate pretense, or drop the pretense around what you think this is supposed to be. Because the more real you are in how you're communicating with people, especially on the internet, when you don't have the luxury of standing in front of them in a store where you're showing them the product and you're talking about it and you're getting to know that person and building a relationship, this is where you really truly have to be yourself. You can't put on anything that's not you, because people will read it as inauthentic, and they don't want to do business with people like that. And so you really have to focus on, okay, how do I just talk to people in my normal everyday life when I'm with friends watching football, or watching a movie on TV and everybody's laughing and they're horsing around, and maybe there's some stuff in there that's a little unsavory, and everybody's laughing as a result, and you make wisecracks about it. You don't have any problem doing that. And it's important to recognize that everyone else is in the same situation. They all do the exact same thing. We're all doing the exact same thing. And it's kind of like assuming that people you're selling to don't also take a shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, what do you think?
Very succinct way of putting it, but exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, everybody does the same things. We're all doing the same things, and everybody puts on a mask to present themselves out in the world. But, who gives a shit about that? It's like, I don't want to see some fakey version of you. I want to know who I'm dealing with, because what I need to do business with you is I have to be able to trust you. And if you don't present the version of yourself that is most trustworthy, which is your natural self, then you're screwed. And if you keep doing that, you're going to get the exact same result. It doesn't work. And the fact that there's so much competition out there means you must present yourself as true to who you are as you can, because doing that is actually how you're going to win in the marketplace, because that's actually going to set you apart. That is the differentiating characteristic of you over everybody else. It is not your product, because everybody has the same fucking product.
Yeah.
It is you that's different, and it's you that they want to do business with.
Yeah, it seems like when you tell people it's like too obvious. It can't be this simple. And it's like, no, it really is. And,
it is.
And people that maybe don't have the confidence they think they have to put on a character is, no, that your honest self is far more interesting than the bland, serious, professional image that you think you've got to put on. Trust me, in probably all of cases, being yourself and honest is far more interesting. With all your vulnerabilities and your positives, is far more interesting than anything you're contrived that you're trying to do because you think you should. And I think it's the corporate world is largely responsible for this, and big PR companies that manage every word that a company says, and they ultimately start saying nothing. Some of these jargon-filled phrases. No, you should just be yourself. It's far better, and it's easier and better on your mental health as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. John, for somebody who's just starting with this and they're going to try and get their feet wet, what would be the easiest way? Let's say they need to write an email to someone that they've never communicated with before. What would you say would be the best way for them to approach doing this for the first time? Like, break it down for them so that they've got maybe even some steps for how they approach this.
Well, clearly you have, when you're emailing someone, say for trying to get a new client, you've obviously got intentions there. And one of my big things that I think about is call out the elephant in the room, is I always say. Like, don't try and hide from that. Try and reference that in a way where you're bringing it up and you're making light of it. And then think of that formula, the attention, and then you communicate, then you persuade. So attention, what's the most honest thing you can say? And you can even steal that line, by the way. I give it to people all the time because it's a good line. I wanted to introduce myself in a way that was honest, witty, and clever. Interesting, witty, and clever. Alas, I wrote this email instead. And then say, let me get right down to business. And then you could even put in bullet points. Say you're looking for a job in marketing. You've got no experience and you really want to work in marketing. Say, I want a job. Next one, I have no experience, but you can mold me into the perfect employee. And then just list your sales pitch in a few bullets, and then think about how to close it and make your ask in a way that is sugar-coated. So I'd love to do a call with you. You can, if I'm boring, you can hang up on me anytime. Or just think of how can you make light of it. One way of looking at this might be try and write the email, and if you think it comes out stern and you just can't shake it, try and write that same email. But imagine one of your best friends is the person you're writing to, and that might help because she'll stop writing. Hopefully, that will stop you writing in this like scared sort of style. Write the message to them, and hopefully that will help. And if that doesn't work, read it. Record yourself speaking and do it, and then you'll get enough that when you get it transcribed, you'll be able to play around with it. Those are the things I would say is, and just keep writing is another one. You've got to keep doing this to get better.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that tip about, write it as though you're writing it, or speak it as though you're speaking it to your best friend, because it neutralizes everything. And your job is, you have a relationship with this person. And so your job is to figure out how to talk to them in a way that would make them interested, in hearing what you have to say. And one thing you might also do with that is you write it or you speak it and have it transcribed, and then have your best friend read it and give you feedback on whether or not it was funny or it was enough to make them want to talk with you more. Because having that immediate feedback from the market, and in this case, it's your best friend, it's safe for you. It's some market data that says, oh, that just, dropped like a bomb and forget it. That's not working.
If you're being too stern, like, why are you writing like this? This isn't how you talk to me.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
I think a big issue people have as well is they put people on a pedestal. And we all do this. Like, even I imagine I have some people that I look up to that I kind of put on a pedestal, but I never write to them and make them know that. And I think a lot of people, they think, oh, this person's the founder of one of my favorite, drinks brand. And you put them on a pedestal, or your favorite comedian even, or whatever it might be. And you kind of put them on a pedestal and think, I've got to write in this way because you've got to show respect. And showing respect is good, but don't make them make yourself be boring because you're trying to show respect. Respect is great.
Brilliant.
That's a good approach, I think.
That's really brilliant. Well, I think that, because this is really heady stuff to be thinking about, I think what you've shared so far in this conversation is extremely valuable and has takeaways that people can actually implement right now. And just the idea that, it's like anything else in life, you have to start it and you have to do it and you have to do more of it. Now, I guess the last question that I would ask you, John, for our conversation today is, most business owners, especially ones who are just starting up their companies, don't have a lot of time. And this is going to be a big objection because people are going to feel like, oh my God, this is just taking so much time. I don't have time to do this stuff. And if they don't have the ability to hire someone to write these things for them, what would you suggest to them or say to them about how to get this stuff written? Maybe it's the length of it or the content of it, where somebody who's running their own business is just trying to keep their head above water, but still needs to be doing these things. What would you say to them for how they can approach doing this, where they can still get the impact, but not have to spend a ton of time doing it?
Sure. Well, this is, I don't know if this is the right time to pitch, but there are templates that I have available called pitching templates.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
I have, the Charm Offensive all-in-one B2B template pack where I've got loads of cold pitching templates and I've created loads more. So that is one option, is to get a template pack. And the other one, if people still want to do it themselves, it doesn't take a long time. Like if you record yourself speaking and transcribe it, really, I think the big time sink there is you're hesitating in sending stuff. And just start doing it. As soon as you start getting responses, it gets really addictive. So if people want to do it themselves, graduated exposure, like you say. First one, send it to your best friend. Then send it to maybe a small business that you're not so terrified of emailing. And then you keep going up and up and up. But if you really don't want to do any writing yourself because you've got a million other things to do, template packs are great because you can kind of use those and just amend it to your needs, I would say.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that was the answer I was.
Well, I think it's absolutely, it makes perfect sense because, people are looking for examples of how to do these things. And when you're talking about copywriting, this is an animal that is unfamiliar to pretty much 99% of the population. And so people need a place to start. And the best way to do that is to just simply have a model to follow. And you've got templates, and I'll include in the notes online where people can find that information. And so I think that's a perfect way of doing this. It is a shortcut to getting you where you want to go. And it's not a big investment of time or money in making that happen. Because if you're following what someone has done in the past that's been very successful, and I know for a fact, the people that you've worked with that are in your private Facebook group, those people are all coming back into the group saying, holy shit, I sent this out and oh my God, I've got 3 leads already and I'm meeting with them this week. And they actually sound shocked that they had success with it because it's, as you said earlier, people think, well, it can't be this easy, but in fact it is, because all you're doing in this is presenting yourself as who you are with a little bit of humor. And every one of us has that in us. And if we're authentic in who we're presenting, even if we're more on the serious side, there are ways to just present ourselves as who we are that doesn't take much effort or thought, because who knows us better than we do? Hello?
Make the best. You got to make the best. Try and make it the best way of making the best first impression you can. Yeah. And if you make a good first impression, it gets remembered for a very long time.
Beautiful. I love it. John, for everyone who's listening, can you share with us where people can find you if they want to know more about you or inquire about what you have to offer, including the templates? Where can people find you?
Cool. So the first one is my Facebook group, Charm Offensive. If you search for that, you'll see a Facebook group. I think there's about 7,800 members in there. If you don't like Facebook, you can go to charm-offensive.co.uk. That's charm-offensive.co.uk, and there's a shop there and a blog and all that kind of stuff on there. Or if you like LinkedIn, if you search for my name, John Buchan, that's Buchan. You can find me on LinkedIn and you'll know who I am because I'm the one with the picture of me rescuing the baby in a basket of curtains from a running baby. So those are the ways you can get in touch.
Oh, that's brilliant. John, thank you so very much for this really rich and helpful conversation. This is the toughest part of having a small business and selling online. And this also applies to people who have actual stores where they're selling things. You're always going to be communicating with your customers and your prospects, and you always have to do it in writing because people will be sending out direct mail or direct mailings to the mailing address that they have for their customers or their database of leads. And so you're going to write something anyways. Why write something that's really shitty that isn't going to get the results? And also, if you start writing to people in a way that is much more who you are and your voice with a little bit of humor, you will absolutely see a dramatic increase in the open rate of your emails that are being sent out, because people will look forward to hearing from you because the way you talk about things is completely different, and they're going to want to know more about you simply because you got their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't try.
Thank you, John. This has been magnificent. And so with that, we will wrap it up. And I will encourage you to check out more about John in the show notes. And as I always wrap up every episode, either of my podcast, I always ask you to think about where you're at in what you're doing right now and ask yourself the question, what's your next move? I'm Arlene Battisil, and I'll be back with another episode. Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battisil, and I want to know, what's your next move?